This is what Victor Davis Hanson, who started much controversy on X.com yesterday, wrote. I responded to it. What triggered the American Civil War were state officials who refused to honor federal law and instead boasted of their open defiance of Washington. That precedent apparently is the incendiary model for the weird but dangerous recent behavior of an increasingly unhinged California governor, Gavin Gruesome Newsom. VDH, Victor Davis Hanson, is a great scholar. He is a great American. He's a great conservative. Like many conservatives, he's a Jaffaite. He is a student of Leo Strauss. He is a Jacobin of sorts, and he's got a blind spot for Lincoln. Trump has the same blind spot from time to time. This is as a result of historical revisionism, which was begun by this guy who was a very well-respected and admired and well-read professor. His name was Leo Strauss. And, Kevin Gutzman used to, and Tom Woods used to make fun of these people and call them Straussians. Well, the Straussians begat the Jaffaites. Who is Jaffa? Harry Jaffa was a professor of history who took the side that Lincoln was right about everything and was a saint, and that there never was a cause or a case, or there never could be made a cause or a case for any state that ever entered in the Union to leave it. You might have heard, I put a book back into print. It was written by Alexander Tyler Bledsoe, and the book is called Is Davis a Traitor? Was there a constitutional right to secession previous to the War of 1861? The book is so profound, so well done, and so thorough, no one on the other side ever bothered to write a response. Now, that is a true story. Or I'll go Hillary on you. Now, that is a fact, okay? Now, that is what happened, and that is a fact. That is what happened. Do you want the Cliff Note version of Albert Tyler Bledsoe's? By the way, it's available in the Founders Trading Poster. We only have one copy left, or there are boxes. I only saw one copy on the shelf. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to redo the cover and get it reprinted. It'll be out. I might be able to get it out in time for the 4th of July. Is Davis a traitor? Okay, I'll give you the Cliff Note. And by the way, historian Brian McClanahan was my co-editor for the book. He and I did all the research necessary, wrote the introduction to the chapters. I did most of the work on the footnotes. I took Bledsoe's footnotes. If you get the digital version of Is Davis a Traitor, then you get the hyperlinks if they still work, because the book came out 13 years ago. No, heck, the book came out, 13 years ago. Is there a case to be made that there was a right to secession? There's still a case to be made. Nothing has changed. Let me repeat that. If California wants to secede, it can. Now, I will be the first to tell you that there are political and pragmatic questions that you have to answer. For example, what about their share of the debt? They certainly helped us run it up. What about the military installations for Camp Pendleton, the Presidio, Edwards Air Force Base, etc.? The Budge Training Center in San Diego for the United States Navy. These are all political questions. When I say they're political questions, that simply means that grown men would have to sit down at tables and would have to negotiate a settlement, basically, which is what you would do. By the way, this is what the British did when they got out of the European Union, when they Brexited. They had to sit down with Europe, with the EU, and then they had to say, no, you're not getting that. There was still a battle going on the EU claiming that they had some claim to the fishing waters off the coast of Great Britain. And the British are going like, no, dude, this isn't the EU. And it was important because there is a very healthy and large supply of certain species of fish that are only in British waters. Well, the EU was like, you can't cut us off. People will starve. And the British were like, I believe that the settlement was that, well, you can fish in there, but you got to weigh everything when you come out. You got to pay a tax on it, a tariff on it. That was a political question. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about here? And I feel like sometimes if I go into the Crusader Stadium chat room at crusadechannel.com/chat, I will see all manner of comments, and my head will spin, and I'll go like, how in the world did you get that out of what I just said? This is a political question. So, in the book, Is Davis a Traitor? It's 14 chapters. I told this to Brandon House last week in the interview I did with Brandon. You can get a really good Cliff Note version of what's in Is Davis a Traitor? Basically, here's the principle. If something is not in the Constitution, then the 10th Amendment reserved it and preserved it to the states. Does everyone understand that? That's why the 10th Amendment says what it says. By the way, Michael Bolden and the guys at the 10th Amendment Center completely agree with me, or I agree with them. A state that can ratify a constitution can unratify it. Now, again, it may be politically toxic to do it. And you would have to work out because the federal tentacles are so large. Like, for example, here in Louisiana. You know, I was down there I go down there every Sunday to go to Mass at Old St. Patrick's, and I didn't even realize there's still a Federal Reserve building. It's on Decatur Street in New Orleans. There is the remnants of a U.S. Mint that is still there. The Mint building is still there. There is the Hale Boggs Federal Building, which is on Camp Street, which is the basically the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That's where it is. What if Louisiana seceded? What will we do with the Hale Boggs Building? There is Jackson Barracks, which is still an active military installation. There is in western Louisiana, north of Walsing and Weston, our home, soon to be home. There is Fort Polk, which is still a functioning military base. There is Barksdale Air Force Base in Shreveport. These are questions that you have to ask and have to be answered. You'd have to sit down and you'd have to go like, well, we're keeping the air base. You can come get your planes. But then somebody may say, well, you know what? We paid 13% of all revenue to the federal government during those years those planes were built. So we're going to claim that we can keep 13% of the planes and the hardware. Well, then the federalities, if they're smart, and Trump's doing the negotiations, they're going to come back and go, okay, well, then you get 13% of the debt. The debt makes these questions harder to answer, but they're not impossible, is the point. So, if it's not in the Constitution and it's not prohibited by it, then it's reserved to the states. The power, the easiest answer that I can ever give anyone is this. When New York became state number 11, New Hampshire became state number 9 that ratified the Constitution, 4 states were not yet in the Union. 4 states. It would have been Virginia, Rhode Island, New York, and North Carolina. Were not in the Union. Rhode Island and North Carolina would not join for 2 more years until the Bill of Rights was ratified. What happened when someone wanted to leave South Carolina and travel to Virginia and go through North Carolina? I'll tell you what happened. Nothing. Nothing happened. Well, why didn't anything happen? Well, nothing happened because you were still under the Articles of Confederation, basically, a firm league of friendship and what have you here. The idea that
0.0.
The idea that everyone becomes enemies all of a sudden, I think is ridiculous. You can become an enemy if you want. So 10th Amendment says, and okay, let's pretend like there is no 10th Amendment. Now, Mike, no, you tell me. Well, the common principle in law is this, and you people that are lawyers out there, you know more about this than I do. The common principle in law is this: if you have the authority or the sovereignty to enter into an agreement and sign on the dotted line, then you have the sovereignty and authority to say that the agreement, if there's multiple parties to it, that one of the parties is in material breach and you wish to leave the agreement. So if you had the authority to enter it, you have the authority to leave it. It's a simple principle here. The idea here that you're stuck in it forever is stupid and ridiculous. So that's what I would say to that. So back to Victor Davis Hanson. And he does make some points here, but he's just completely wrong about secession and about the southern states. Were the southern states filled with choir boys and angels? No, they had slaves. Of course they weren't. Were they these evil Simon Legree arch villains that hated the human race? No. Victor Davis Hanson. Newsom claimed that Trump's use of ICE to detain those here illegally in the U.S. was reckless, chaotic, and eroding trust. Does he think that his own rhetoric is creating calm and building trust by opposing the lawful enforcement of federal statutes? Or is he following the baleful model of arch-Confederate rebel Jefferson Davis? And again, I have to continue to correct Victor Davis Hanson here. Davis was leading a confederacy, Victor. He was not subject to the jurisdiction thereof of the United States. Why is this so hard for Yankee Southern state haters to understand this? President Davis was honoring the Confederate Constitution. Those states were no longer parties to the federal Constitution. It doesn't matter what the federal Constitution said. It doesn't matter what Congresses had passed, what laws that applied to all of the states. When they seceded and reclaimed their sovereign authority that they used to ratify and to join the Union, they were free. The idea here, they were lawless and lawbreakers. Well, now, if they were violating the Confederate Constitution, they would have been. You know what was amazing to me? To see all the people on X that jumped on him and took the side of the South. Folks, the leftards have lost. They rewrote the history, but enough of it survived, and guys like me and Brian McClanahan and others, and the Abbeville Institute and other good people out there are telling, no, that's not correct. This is how you should view this. I was pleasantly surprised to see the amount of people that told Victor Davis Hanson, you're wrong about the South and you're wrong about secession. Does Newsom support the similar defense of fellow resistor Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass? She all but called for official city resistance to the enforcement of federal law with an added threat. We will not stand for this. Maggie, play digital media file number 6. You want to hear a direct call from the Unified School District of Los Angeles and its director going like, we're not obeying any of those laws. Now, this is not what Jefferson Davis did. This is saying they're federal laws and we're going to ignore them, nanya boo-boo, because there are kids involved and there's nothing you can do about it.
Who in their right mind would accept that reality? So I want to be reassuring to our community. Every single graduation site is a protected site. I have directed our own police force to redouble their efforts and establish perimeters of safety around graduation sites to intervene and interfere with any federal agency who may want to take action during these joyous times that we call graduation. Not on our watch.
It's a joyous time. Law and order doesn't make sense.
The entire thing is illogical. Why would federal agencies be descending upon graduation ceremonies? Because they're ICE and they're Trump and they're evil. Again, isolate your enemy, make him out to be something that he's not, and then rinse and repeat. Just keep doing it. So that is, again, you're creating a sanctuary zone to harbor illegal alien criminal trespassers. And that's what they said. If I was a terrorist and all I cared about was a body count, a graduation ceremony, and I was an Orthodox Muslim jihadist and I was here to wreak that havoc and to perform acts of terrorism, You just told me locations where I can go and I can get in scot-free with my little backpack. And I can go and plant bombs or do whatever the hell I want and I can get away with it because you made it possible. That's one perspective.